Welcome back to Supply Chain Saga. Joining me today is Parth Pethani, founder of WarehouseRobotics.com. As a mechanical engineer by trade, Parth has been involved in warehousing and warehouse automation for the last 10 years. His pragmatic approach to designing robot-enabled warehouses shines through as he sits down and helps me begin to understand the step-by-step thought process needed to automate your warehouse. Let's dive in. And we're live. Welcome.
Thank you.
So how about you start by introducing yourself and just tell us a little bit about what it is you do and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Yeah, would love to. Hello, everyone. My name is Parth Pethani. I am a mechanical engineer by education, but I just completed a decade in warehousing technology space. If you have to sum up my last 10 years in warehouse technology space, the way I look at it is imagine a three-circle Venn diagram. First circle representing your typical industrial engineer, mechanical engineering skills, capabilities. Second circle being your WMS, enterprise software consulting, so designing, configuring, implementing. And then the final circle being your robotics solutioning, designing for robotics. So imagine these three circles intersecting at one point. That's where I thrive. So that's last 10 years has been pretty much that. Last few years have been very much focused on robotic space. I have started a website called WHSERobotics.com. I do constantly post on LinkedIn. I try to educate the industry about how to enable robots in the warehouse, because I think that's the knowledge gap exists. So that's who I am, trying to design robot-forward warehouses and just help enable the knowledge gap that exists.
Okay, so if I understand, it's your typical mechanical engineering path, and then you, for a while, went off into the WMS, which for anybody not aware, it's warehouse management system path. Yep. So really enabled on the software side, and then the last one, which has been really the last 10 years, has been all about automation and how to take warehouses from being a more manual situation to being more efficient, helping us deal with the worker shortages and things like that.
Yep. So started software in the world, started as a software, but then moved to hardware. Yes.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
It's a culmination of my undergrad, if you will. So in undergrad, I used to build robots and stuff like that. I'm like, I need to find a place to use them. And eventually the robotics wave hit the warehousing space. And I'm like, I think this is where I should go.
Wow, that's cool. So what kind of robots were you building when you were in college?
So I made a line follower, which is like typical AGVs in today's world, where they have a magnetic field and it follows the line.
And an AGV is automated
guided vehicle. Yes, automatic guided vehicle. So I made line followers. It was a small bot that I made. Then a light follower, so it follows a specific light. And then also a wall follower. So whatever the wall is, it's a different version of a line follower robot. But made those small bots, never found a use case, if you will. That was back in late 2000s. And I found a use case for that. And then suddenly, post 2015, 2016, that's where the robots, I think, hit the warehousing industry, because the Amazon Kiva acquisition happened in 2012. And after that, I think people started seeing the benefits of robots and started thinking about it. Not implementing, but at least thinking about it.
Well, the interesting thing is you had robotic companies born out of Kiva, Amazon taking over Kiva and not supporting those warehouses
Correct.
anymore.
Yep, that's exactly Locus, right?
Yep, that's what happened with Locus.
Yep.
And really, I saw a fascinating chart. I think it was in the middle of the pandemic, but basically, for a long, long time, robots did not equal employees at Amazon. And then in around 2019, they basically they hit the break even, where it's like number of robots was the same as the number of human capital there and laborers. And then it just goes exponential.
Yeah.
Where there's so many robots outnumber people by so much.
And I think that's the value in it, right? Right now, I have family who works in warehousing, right? So I have family who works in Amazon warehouses. I know how much they walk. I know how much hard work they do. So I feel like robots definitely help them when compared to like less walking, less sortation, for example, just pushing a conveyor. So I have a family member who basically works in a warehouse where they push cartons on a conveyor belt, right? And those are heavy cartons, typically like 20 pounds carton. They keep pushing it. And at the end of the day, their hands are pretty much like tired. And I feel like I wish I had a solution for that. I wish we had a solution for that, because at the end, it's a human most MVP, right? They're the MVP for our warehouses. So I feel like robots are definitely going to help them. And I would like to have a healthy debate when someone says replacing. No, it's not replacing. It's more of benefiting them.
It's augmentation.
Yeah, augmentation.
And I think I've spoken to people who are far smarter than I am on this. And the conversation always comes, it's like, we have to have robots to keep up.
Yep.
Like it's not, the workforce isn't there for the jobs that would need to be done. And then of course, I mean, fewer and fewer, I think BJ Patterson says this, he says, remove the suck.
Yeah, that's true. Remove the suck
out of the job. And so it's like, and really the robots and the putting automation into warehouses is what that's all about. Now, as I think, when you're a large company, you can experiment, you can figure out best practices, you can do all these sorts of things. And I think there's, to quote BJ Patterson again, it's like you don't automate for the sake of automation when you're a smaller player. Yep. It's like we're when you really have to watch your balance sheet, where you deploy your cash and things like that. You have to be a lot more intentional about things. And what I've also kind of noticed from my own perspective in the warehouse, and this is something that we're really focusing on this year, is I personally am convinced that we are not using our WMS to its full capabilities. And that WMS has got like little algorithms and things like that, what basically AI.
Yeah, that's true.
That's really helping to route, and it's like recognizing patterns and like, okay, well, this is here, and like you put away functions, and most people aren't using that.
So you just hit a gold nugget, right? So WMS has a lot of potential even before thinking of robotics. WMS's warehouse management systems are so well trained. They have been in business for at least 20 plus years now, right? If you think about Manhattan, as you said, tier one players started in 1990s. They have 30 years of experience behind them, and a lot of others, tier one, tier two, tier three WMSs have come up, and all are solving the same problem, like having an enterprise software solution for four walls of the warehouse. So everyone has their niche, everyone has their capabilities. So I feel like a lot of operators, if you will, needs to really explore and exploit their WMS systems, because I feel like they forget that it has more power even before robotics. For example, you mentioned about put away. So there is another functionality called slotting. Right, you can slot your warehouse pick path areas or pick areas in such a way that you reduce your walking, which is definitely helpful, because eventually that's what AMRs are going to do. Autonomous mobile robot like Locus or 60 is helping you with your pick path improvements, reducing your time to complete that. Right, so WMS has that power. So WMS also has a power with batching. For example, when I think about batching, or people are also used to the term called waving. Waving or batch is when you have a pool of orders that you batch together and send it for picking. A lot of warehouses don't do that right now. A lot of warehouses are doing discrete order picking, or cluster order picking, which means that you have a cart. You have a cart can, let's say, do 16 totes, and 16 tote represents one order. So at the time, you're only picking 16 orders. That's cluster picking. You push the cart, you're in your pick path, and at the end of the pick path, you go to the pack station, you have a 16 orders that you pack it. But then there is another concept on top of that is called wave picking or batch picking. Basically, you cluster all those 16 orders into one tote, and then just have a sort after the picking side, which can really increase your reduce your travel time or reduce your how many locations you visit, but at the same time increase your throughput as well. So there are many opportunities. I've been very vocal about this. There are many opportunities to explore even before going to the robotics path.
Right, and it's even as you're speaking here, and telling me about these things, I'm like, yeah, we're not using all those. and to your point, as I understand what you're saying, your batch picking just says, okay, we're going to go after these 16 orders, and so the person, your picker, may be going in through the same aisle more than once. So they pick one order and that takes them to 3 aisles. And then they pick the second order and it might take them back to the first aisle.
Yeah.
Whereas your wave picking is if I understand correctly, that's saying, okay, every order in your 2,000 orders that are pending that has this particular SKU in this location, you need to pick 102 of these items.
Correct. What is your cart capacity, right? So for 2,000 orders, if my cart can only do 100 units, I go and create a task which will have one cart assigned to get to that one location and pick up 100 units, right? And then once that pickup is done, now you need to marry the order, right? You need to create the order, which is, I say, sort. So what happens is once you pick this order, let's take a smaller example, right? Let's say 10 orders, right? 10 orders, each of them have 2 SKUs on them. So we are looking at 20 SKUs. For example, for this 20 SKU, you are visiting 5 locations to get this 20 SKU. So 5 locations, so you do 5 walks, 5 carts, right? All those 5 carts come at the sort location, which is like typical put wall or a put table or something like that, right? You come to that sort and now you actually create the order there or marry the order there. People call it order consolidation, people call order creation or sorting mechanism or anything like that. But you need to add that sort because you are doing batch picking, right? There are pros and cons to each and everything. So with warehousing, that the thing that I've learned in last 10 years is a heuristic. It's an iteration. There is no silver bullet to anything in warehouse.
Right.
So wave picking can work for some clients, whereas for some clients it doesn't make sense because you're adding a sort. I have seen wave picking very famous or very highly adopted in cosmetics. So cosmetic clients using wave picking have a put wall because their SKUs are smaller and it really works with them. So again, with batch comes a sort. That's an additional touch. But that additional touch is taken away, or the additional touch that you'd add is not that much because you're saving so much on walking.
Right.
So that's how you have to think. Like, and again, I have a graph. I'll share it with you where I try to plot on based on the SKU diversity, the volume, order volume, how actually you should be thinking about what solution. So batch picking, cluster picking, pick assist AMRs or goods to person solution or variety of solutions out there. So yeah, it's a heuristic. There is no silver bullet.
Right, of course. But I think the main point that I take away from this, the last few minutes, is that everything we just discussed is typically within the WMS already.
Yes.
And you can design without before you go to any kind of automation like that. So
correct.
Yeah. And so the big thing is I think especially for smaller operators like myself, is we want to make sure that you're fully utilizing the tools that you already have.
Correct.
And then those are free. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, you make a solid point. And that's something that we personally, that people that I've been talking to are like, are you sure your WMS is optimized? Are you using all your capabilities? Because each of those clients, for example, there are companies, tier 2 WMS provider, who is very good at managing multi-tenant warehouses, right? Or that is typically, if you're an operator, smaller operator, or just starting out, you try to take all the clients that you get, right? Like, just give me anything. I want to ship for you, right?
Of course.
At that point, a typical standalone out-of-the-box tier 1, or of course, you wouldn't have tier 1 at that point, but let's say you have a tier 1 WMS. They are not the best at multi-tenant. That's not their niche, because the tier 1 WMS are like can handle any super automated warehouses. So whereas there are WMS who are specifically focused on that niche, where like, hey guys, you have a multi-tenant warehouse, my WMS can handle that. I'll make sure that your multi-tenant warehouses are pretty solid. You have the capabilities that you need, and we will help you out with that. So to your point, yes, it takes learning, but I feel like if we are ready to invest some dollars in automation, I think use that dollars and invest on just learning the WMS you have, some of them.
Okay. So I think that's excellent advice and a good segue. Before we jump ahead, I think it's an interesting point to make, where it's like, so we do multi-tenant warehouses. Okay. I mean, you could almost view, the number of customers we have on a given set of square footage is very, very, it's very high compared to, something like a Manhattan or something like that would never work.
Yeah.
I mean, it would work. It would just be incredibly inefficient and be a terrible use of capital.
Correct. Yes.
Because you have to go through multi-step processes to answer hundreds of questions.
Correct. Yep.
And stipulations and this and that and what if then statements and really sort those things out for each customer.
Correct.
Whereas, so in our warehouse right now, we use the artist formerly known as 3PL Central. So now called Extensive.
Yeah.
And it's great because we can onboard our clients in hours.
Yeah.
And we just have it, and we know we need this set of data. We have the forms created.
Correct.
If the customer can provide us with it, we can get them onboarded very, very quickly.
Correct. And that's the thing with, as I was saying, the niche, right? Because you cannot imagine that easy way to onboard a client in a tier 1 warehouse, right? Of course. Yeah. So WMS, it will take so much time. I need EDIs ready. I need translations ready, XML based, or so many other layers that go into for tier 1 WMS versus someone who is very niche in multi-tenant warehousing space.
But the other piece of that, though, is the people using the tier 1 systems have sometimes 1 million plus square feet designated to one single customer.
Correct. Yes, and so my experience with tier 1 WMS has been with Manhattan Associates, and from my limited experience with them, most of the clients that we were engaged with, it was pretty much retailers, right? So if you're a retailer, your warehouse is dedicated to yourself, right?
Correct.
So it makes sense to invest in technology to make sure you are getting the best use of your capital.
Yes.
Because at the end, it helps with profitability, right? So agree to your point that mostly clients are single tenant warehouses for tier 1.
Yes. So back to that segue. So moving forward, let's say an operator is making good use of they're in that nice sweet spot where they're utilizing their WMS. Maybe they're not using all the functionality, but they're using all the functionality that's necessary for their operation. And they're saying, okay, we want to start looking at some places to invest. And I think this is an interesting conversation now because, 2 or 3 years ago, capital was flowing everywhere. And then now it's a very, very capital constrained environment. So I think operators, we all were probably very, very focused on what to deploy and when to deploy it. But now you have no choice. And so if you're going to use those precious dollars to reinvest in your operation, how do we move forward? Like what do you do? And especially, I'm thinking, let's say, I don't know if you can really think of it this way, but let's say you've got, let's try to parse it into like 100,000 to 300,000, 300,000 to 750, and then 750 to a couple million.
Okay, so that's actually a very challenging question. Let me think through.
Look, you understand that.
I get it. And I think so. The way I would go with is like first making some assumptions, right? The first assumption I'll make is it's a brownfield implementation, right? Because you have an operator, you already have a warehouse, you already are fine tuning a WMS. So I would imagine that to be a brownfield implementation. So when you have a brownfield implementation, when it comes to automation space, there are solutions out there who can pretty much come into any warehouse and help you set up. But we have to think about the invasive score, right? That's something I always think about. How invasive is the technology to my operations, because it's a brownfield operations, right? If it was a greenfield operation, I can put anything, and I know if it's the right technology, it will work. But if it's a brownfield operations, I have to balance shipping my orders versus making sure the technology I'm investing, be it WMS, be it robotics, is actually not invasive to the level that I stop shipping my orders, right? So for example, if you're talking about, this is within the operator space, a brownfield implementation, I would prefer to have a robotics technology, which is less invasive to my operations. That way, the simple solutions that come to my mind are pick assist AMRs, right? Autonomous mobile robots, which are pick assist, like they follow the human being in their pick path and reduce walking a little bit.
So that would be something like a 6-river system,
Locus,
the Chucks, the Locuses.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and any pick assist AMRs, I think the help with them is they are easy to install, comparatively easy to install. They do not really are invasive to your facility. Of course, for any implementation, there are changes needs to be done, but they are not to the level where you will hurt your shipping orders, right? Because at the end, as an operator, you make money when the ship order is out of your warehouse.
Of course.
Right? So that's the first approach I will take of thinking about assuming it's a brownfield implementation, assuming this is fine-tuned WMS. Next step I would do is that I'll start looking at pick assist AMRs to reduce my picking. So the reason we always focus on picking is, and you know it very well, is like picking is the most incentive, invasive operation in your warehouse. It takes you to 55 to 65% of your cost is going for picking. So that's why everyone is so focused on solving the picking problem. Amazon had a competition called the picking challenge. So that's very important. So that's why pick assist AMRs can really help you with your picking side of the world, because that's where you start working on it. Now going to the next step is like, if you have a good project team who can really plan out the execution of, let's say, goods to person solution, be it Geek Plus or AutoStore, or I would say AutoStore is a cubed ASRS, right? That's what they call it too.
It's
cube ASRS, automated storage retrieval system.
Okay.
But that's how I call it. I'm not sure AutoStore agrees to it, but it's a cubed one, so it's like a square cube, right? So it goes vertical.
Sounds like a fancy marketing term for a goods to person picking system.
So that's a cube ASRS, and then you have a typical goods to person solution like Geek Plus or Gray Oranges of the world, where Kiva systems, basically you bring a shelf to a picker, and then picker just picks it and puts it in a 8 totes that they have, basically 8 to 12 totes. If you have a good execution plan, good team who can really plan out that execution without being invasive to your operations, that would be the next step to look at it. That, hey, does it make sense? In all this, you have to understand your SKUs cannot be like a home improvement solution, right? You cannot have your SKUs have to really fit into it. So that's an assumption I should have clarified in the beginning. SKUs fit into ASR, SKUs fit into your robots that you're designing. WMS is fine-tuned, and also it's a brownfield implementation.
So, and I just for clarification, because it wasn't that long ago that I didn't understand what brownfield versus greenfield or anything like that. Brownfield is an existing operation that you are trying to expand within the operation.
Yes, change something in the operation.
Okay.
Basically, it's a working site.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then for clarification, in the brownfield operation, you are making the assumption that, it has to your point, you said the invasive score.
Yep.
So it's assuming that the operation, you don't have 20,000 square feet off in the distance where like in the side of the warehouse completely unoccupied.
Usually you wouldn't have it. If you're a small operator,
Correct.
You want to just occupy all the space.
Everything. So you're using all your square footage.
Sure.
And so the autonomous, the
AMRs,
the
pick
AMRs,
assisting, yep.
the pick assisting autonomous mobile robots, AMRs, are those are easy. I mean, they kind of look like Segways. Some of them look like Segways, But they run around your warehouse. They've got a track. You lay a track over on the concrete, whatever it may be.
Yeah, they have a QR code on each aisle that they read,
Right.
and they just basically during the installation phase they come out and map the whole navigation, and then they put a QR code on each aisle.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's not very invasive.
Yep.
Because really, at the end of the day, it's like once you go through the process of getting QR codes put up and getting your WMS fine-tuned, which can all be done without doing anything on the floor, except for the actual QR codes. These things just start walking. I mean, they start moving around, and then it's like another person is just walking.
Yep.
So that's the least invasive typically.
Correct.
And then because it's like the other thing, it's like, as you think about it, and it doesn't even have to be an automated warehouse, but let's, for instance, say that you were in just doing normal forklift aisles and you wanted to get more utilization out of your existing floor plan. And so you decide that, you can go from 12-foot aisles to 10.5-foot aisles, which
VNA 6 feet, 5
VNA
feet,
or whatever it may be.
Yep.
That's going to require you unloading complete rows of racking, putting them really tightly and down on each other and everything like that. Very, very invasive to the operation.
Yep.
And it's not something you typically in a warehouse are going to be able to do over a weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, or shut it down for a while. And then the other thing, you can't shut down your orders.
Correct.
For your customers.
And that's the biggest challenge, right? Because you do not wait for right robot solution before you start shipping orders. Right. I need to ship order. I need to make revenue before even I can think about anything else.
Right. And then there are even kind of, I believe, aren't there are kind of even intermittent things. So it's like if you go all the way back to utilizing the WMS to its maximum and doing the batch picking or the wave picking, whatever it may be, then you can also start to, maybe that's you're picking everything to a shelf, or maybe what you're doing is you've got a pick, like a pick wall, where it's like you put your SKUs in there, and all of a sudden the lights start popping up and things like that. And so that's something where it's just you just have to make the space and you put it on the wall.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So that's batch plus sort. That's what I used to call batch plus sort. That's easy comparatively, right? If it doesn't work, you can still always go back to your cluster picking, put the orders on a cart and just walk the floor, right? Even with peak assist AMRs, if my AMR doesn't work, that's great. I can still have my carts and still walk the floor and finish my order. At the end of the day, my FedEx, my UPS, USPS trucks will have orders that they will take.
Correct. And I think it's important to identify all these things because I don't know how many operators out there think that it's just moving to looks like a Tesla factory immediately where it's got mobile robot arms and doing this sort of thing. But there are lots of intermittent steps and stuff.
Yeah, they're 100%. So I'll give you an example. The very first project that we took was a multi-tenant warehouse, right? It was the operators... To their benefit, this was their new business. They just trying to help different e-commerce brands start with shipping because they had faced challenges as well. And they didn't realize the concept of slotting, right? Where, let's say, for example, if it's a multi-tenant warehouse, it's good to give prime real estate, which is close to your packing stations, to, let's say, your prime customers, right? You have like 10 customers in your warehouse. I'm pretty sure that out of 10, you have 2 which are very good to you in terms of revenue, right? You want to give them a prime real estate. So,
Pareto principle, 80-20.
Yeah, so right. So you want to give them the prime real estate, whereas you want to keep them all together, right, at the same time. So you don't have to waste too much time to fulfill their orders. I've been to a warehouse where clients were just scattered around everywhere. Let's say, for example, client A will have aisle 1, but at the same time, client A will have aisle 10 as well. So if I'm picking something from aisle 1, I have to walk all the way to aisle 10 to complete that order.
Right.
So as an IE, I would pretty much, the very first step I'll do is I'll slot the whole warehouse. I'll tell you how many aisles, how many bays, how many bins, how many locations goes to this client, and this client. So that way your pick path improves really well.
Right.
You're still pushing the order, but still improves a lot.
And this is primarily going to work in a warehouse that is almost exclusively designated for direct to consumer shipping, because when you start adding in the complexity of pallet in, pallet out, and then it's just you just need to put pallets where there are pallet spaces. You're not going to want to have 2 or 3 aisles that have got 30 spaces, for a few days empty. You're just going to put them up where you can put them up.
Correct. Yeah. So I should have clarified. The use case that I was explaining was pretty much for e-commerce brand, right? So they were e-commerce brand and they were shipping order to customers directly. Yep.
Okay. Just a subtle subtle point.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the warehouses, I think a lot of the more successful warehouses that are on the small, medium sized, we're trying to go after a blended. We don't want to be 100% direct to consumer, and we don't want to be 100% pallet in, pallet out.
Yep.
Or that's just me.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that there are some very, very successful operators out there that are just doing transloading, just doing or cross docking.
Correct. Yep.
Just doing pallet in, pallet out. So that's not to say that those people don't exist, but a lot of the operators I speak with are trying to do a blended strategy.
Correct. Yep.
So
it's good to have fit in both the sides. Yep.
A little bit of diversity. Yeah, exactly. Diversification, I should say. So if you if you jump ahead or jump back to kind of where we were, you showed these people how to slot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start assigning some, like, what are the percentage, how do we evaluate the returns in all of these things? So let's just start from like a very basic, just operation, just somebody's flying by the seat of their pants. And then let's say you do batching or wave picking or whatever it may be. And then what are the returns like in that from an efficiency perspective?
So I'll give you an example, and I'll might be everywhere, but I want to give you some examples to answer that question. So, and again, I'm starting with robotics, but I'll go into smaller details as well. So, for a typical cluster picking, you have a UPH for a decent sized warehouse, not a small one, but a decent sized warehouse. You have an UPH unit per hour for picking, usually around 60 units per hour. As a picker, you are picking something 1 unit per day, 1 unit per hour, 1 unit per minute as you're walking the floor, right? 60 UPH is what, 60, 65 UPH. On a good day, you can hit 70, 75 if your orders are very much condensed in a small area. But people start with 60 UPH as a baseline. And then if you look at Epic Assist AMRs to start doing the similar job, you can easily double that or triple that. One of the implementation that I did, we on a peak day, we hit 180 UPH, which is 3 times our baseline, which was 60 UPH. But on average, we were hitting 120, 130 UPH.
And this is the basic, not very invasive.
Locus or 60 systems or something like that, right?
So 2 to 3 times productivity.
Correct. Yeah, 2 to 3 times. And you'll see case studies out there. For example, DHL is very vocal about Locus. You have a lot of case studies outside. They pretty much show that 2 to 3x improvement on their pick rates, which is great. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the examples to use. But at the same time, warehousing is all about, I would say, time game. It's a time game, right? And that's industrial engineering too, right? Everything is about time. So at the end, what happens is if you do anything that helps you save time, you can pretty much improve any KPI. So for example, let's say you're using 5S on your packing stations, 5S methodology on your packing station, make sure everything is labeled, everything is in the right place. You can reduce your packing time by almost 20%, 30%, right? That's right there savings, which because it improves your packing UPH, which means you have more orders that you can push out. So at the end, it's all about time. So
now it's like you go from 60 units per hour to, let's say, 66 or even 72 units per hour.
Correct. Yeah. Picked. Yeah. Picked and packed. Right. So I don't have a good answer, if you will, like for how each step improves, because there are variations about how big is your warehouse, what are the SKUs you're doing, what kind of orders you're doing. Is it single line, single unit orders, or is it multi-unit orders? There are different variation. Is it a peak season? It's not a peak season. Is it something like Justin Bieber Crocs, or is not something like that? Because
what's your replenishment strategy? Everything.
Correct. Yeah.
How many people do you have?
Yeah. So there is always, as I said, there is always warehousing is always heuristics, right? It's all about iteration, what works best for you. But at the same time, it's good to have this baseline that really helps you decide, okay, am I in a right direction? Am I in a wrong direction?
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And then, so once we go past the automated mobile robots, the AMRs, your next thing, what would you say the next level of robotics is?
We are talking mostly about right now mobile robots, right? So there are robots which can move in specific direction, but then also there are robotic arms as well, right? So there are robotic arms that can help you as well. So the next evolution, again, depends. But the next evolution in terms of technology, let's not say from the use case perspective, but from a technology perspective, is your goods-to-person solution like Kiva, Geek Plus, gray orange of that, like where you basically fence that, you have all the picking, the robot brings the whole shelf to you and pick from it, right? Basically, you don't walk at all. So the next evolution, I would say, is like with Pick Assist AMR, you walk. With goods-to-person solution, you don't walk at all in picking.
Okay.
Right? That's the next evolution. And now within that no walk zone, you have a couple of different technologies. You have Geek Plus, as I mentioned. You have AutoStores. You have Exotecs. You have a lot of variety of options. You also have typical traditional multi shuttle systems where you have a shuttle that brings a tote to you. So there are many solutions in there. It really have to design which solution really makes sense based on your SKU profile, your client profile, your order profile, and stuff like that.
So what is the invasiveness? So let's go to step 2, past the AMRs, where it's the good. So I understand now why they say automated, ASRS, whatever.
Yeah, automated
retrieval
storage.
system.
Yeah.
Okay. The automated storage retrieval system.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I understand why they say that now, and it's not goods to person. If you're considering a goods to person, like the Locus, where it's like they bring it to you.
Yep.
What are the contemplations for how does the invasiveness of that? So in the one, it's minimally invasive.
Yep.
The second one, I assume what you have to do is you have to get new equipment. You have to get new racks that can actually be moved.
Correct. I think the second step is start from the concrete. Your concrete has to be straight, like level-headed, like
really straight.
Yeah, really flat. So that's the first step for the next phase. Like your concrete is not level, it's going to be investment that you need to start doing.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. And the next one is like, okay, the shelves, the fans around it, and stuff like that.
Okay, so this is a dumb question. When I walk around our warehouse, it looks really level.
Okay.
But you're saying it's not like that.
It's not like that. So there is a company specific who specializes in this. They only do warehouse. The warehouse robotics company actually hired them to go and check out the concrete flatness even before thinking about anything, because that's an additional cost as an operator you need to think about.
Of course.
Yeah. So when you're seeing different, let's say, proposals, you're trying to explore stuff, you need to have that in your mind that, hey, can we just make sure my concrete is level or straight enough for your system to work on it?
Okay. Because this isn't an office chair where you can unscrew the little peg at the bottom and like kind of level out the machine. Yeah. Do you? This is really into the weeds, but do you have any idea on a per square footage basis? Let's say I owned my own building, and I said, we're going to designate 10,000 square feet, and it's not level enough. On a per square foot basis, do you have any idea how much it costs to level?
No, actually, unfortunately, I don't. That's a number I'm also looking for, but I don't have that number.
Okay, good number. Well, maybe I'll try to have a concrete specialist on here soon. One of these leveling specialists. Yeah. Okay, so it starts from the ground.
Yep.
That's your first invasive thing. Which, if you have to do anything in the warehouse, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's
you will have concrete holes. Like for example, you will always have concrete holes somewhere concrete cracks, because if it's a warehouse that was created a few years ago and you are leasing it, and usually I have not worked with individuals who have operators who actually own the space. They pretty much lease the space from big players, of course. But at the same time, it's really hard to get that. So pretty much level, straight, flat, I would say flat or concrete. And that's where I was saying about the greenfield implementation, right? So if you're creating your own new warehouse, right? If you're going out and saying, let's say go to some suburb of Kansas and you're creating a whole new warehouse, you can basically make sure that, because, hey, I'm going to put a good 2% solution, my concrete has to be the flattest it can be, right? So that's the investment you already do when you're starting a greenfield implementation. So that's why greenfield implementation is a little different because you get some play area, whereas brownfield is invasive score is very important when you think about brownfield.
So how many greenfield operations have you seen where it started off, the level was great, and then all of a sudden, 5 years into it, the settling has happened and now it's not level anymore?
Actually, that's a solid question. I think the thing is, the 5-year mark will be hitting for a few warehouses in next couple of years. So that's when we will learn. Honestly, I think in next couple of years, there are a few companies that I know had a greenfield implementation, but they didn't start in, let's say, 2023. So they didn't start in 2018. Right? Yeah, 2018. They started in 2020, 2021. So in 2024, 25, we will see what's the answer to that.
I mean, because you can imagine showing up on a Monday, and let's say you don't run a 3-shift, 7-day operation. Let's say somebody shows up one day and all of a sudden that robot won't move the way it's supposed to move because the floor's not. Anyway, interesting. Okay, so let's assume you've got the concrete's level. What's the next aspect of the invasiveness that's going to go into getting one of these type of systems implemented?
Yeah, so the next would be QR codes on the floor for someone like a Geek Plus system or gray orange system. Usually they have a QR code that the robot reads, and that robot basically reads that QR code. So you need to implement those QR codes across your square footage, whatever that square footage is assigned to that system. Then you have to think about fence, right? That's a cost. I'm not a fire safety expert, but you have to also think about fire safety as well, because these are all robots with lithium-ion batteries. So the fire safety also adds up. I have seen, I'm changing a little bit gears here, for a Cube ASRS solution implementation, I have seen that they had to actually create a new ceiling, whole new ceiling, like basically is just because the fire system or the fire sprinklers were way on top. So the Cube ASRS system need to have, like, the fire department had some strict regulations around that, and they basically asked to create a new ceiling which had the fire system in it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
is this in California?
No, actually, this was not. This was Tennessee.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's another invasive aspect, that facility changes are really you need to plan for, right? For any kind of technologies, and especially when you are thinking about just removing complete walking for picking solution, for picking side of the world, right? You have to think about facilities changes a lot. And that's why I think the adoption of pick assist AMR has increased in the last few years, because they are not that invasive. If I'm brownfield implementation, I can easily do a pick assist AMR. Like THL, for example, with Locus, right? They're pretty much going to all their brownfield implementation. And Locus helping with 6 reverse systems, has a lot of other clients who are actually doing the same thing, brownfield implementations.
Wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So after you've got let's say you get all
concrete,
that sort of stuff,
fire, then lighting. Light fixtures should be decent. It should be there anyways. But then also the network, the internet, the networking. Because if it's a concrete and if you do not have right internet, if the robot loses connectivity, what happens next? It doesn't do anything, right? It just stays there. So network connectivity is very important. And then the final thing is just the fence, right? Because if I'm walking into it, I want to make sure it doesn't go around it. So that's additional cost. And we all know cost of steel is so high, right?
Right. So it starts to, as we're talking, it starts to make a lot more sense why people, because it's like you clearly look at something like, I'm a huge fan of AutoStore, as you know.
Yep.
And you start to look at the investment required. You got to make sure with them, I'm not sure if it's the same degree as like the goods to person, like robots that's bringing the entire shelf.
Yep.
But that entire system has to at least be level enough so that grid is not correct. But it does seem like, because you're actually not moving the bins, you might have a little bit more leeway, but I'm not certain.
Yeah. And again, I don't work for them. We don't work for them. So they have right people looking at it. But as an operator, as a buyer, that's something we need to be aware of, right? The facility changes.
Yes.
That's something that right now and I'll be honest, many people are excited to see the shiny objects like robots. But at the same time, as an operator, as a buyer, we need to be very careful when we actually are considering some technology, because that can mean we do a good job and really excel at it, or we did a very poor job and we need to close our stores.
And this is an excellent segue to the question that I really want to ask. Or I want to ask all these questions, but a warehouse goes into a new, the automated mobile robots, the AMRs, 6 river systems. As I understand it, the base implementation is still going to be north of that $100,000 to $300,000. You're probably talking about, I think a minimum viable system is probably, if I had to guess, somewhere probably $500,000 before it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even more at this point. And I think it's like you might want to have to do. You don't just deploy one robot. You don't deploy 2. You have to do probably 6, 8, 10. So there's a number there where the juice isn't worth the squeeze unless you at least commit to that.
Correct. Yes.
And so that's a big consideration.
Yeah.
And so let's say, you invest in a fleet of these AMRs, and then you just keep on seeing. So like in a crazy inflation, the inflationary environment, yes, but when in a place like Southern California where the real estate just went and went crazy up, all of a sudden, let's say you're a couple of years into your project and you've spent, $1 million, $2 million, and then all of a sudden you realize you need to get a lot more out of the building you have, or you're never going to be able to make the jump. You're never going to be able to jump from 1 to 250 or 150 to 300, whatever it may be. So there's this weird, and it's a really bad moving target. It's a hard moving target. Where's the investment, and what's that threshold before you really just need to go through all the pain and invasiveness to get a higher level of robotics?
Correct. So this is again, these are the challenges the operators face every day, right? So I feel like this is solid, and I think every robotics company should hear this. I think so. From, as you said, a moving target, right? You want to make the capacity as much as you can, right? And typically, the best way to do that is to go vertical. Simple as that. You have to go vertical to make sure you are using your warehouse cube to the best level, right? Maximize the cube, right? So ideally, in previous worlds, when it was more about just racking, you will usually go VNA, right? It goes all the way up to 30 feet, 32 feet, 26 feet, whatever the height of the warehouses is. You go VNA, making sure that you have as much as you want. But at the same time, now we have solutions for picking side of the world where they are also going vertical as well. So at that point, it's just a challenge that you can only, it's a decision that you can only make when you are at that point, because now you know how much revenue will be affected if you take on this endeavor versus how much benefit you will get by taking this endeavor. That cost benefit analysis can only be done, I feel like, when you are at that junction, because at that point you have so much knowledge or so much idea about what's happening. But unfortunately, you have to make a decision at that point, right? Or else you have to find a new facility. And if you are in California, you know that buying getting a new facility versus investing in automation is the decision you need to make at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, should I go ahead and get a new facility in, let's say, again, Kansas, right? Where my hourly rate might be a little less than California. But I need to hire a site director. I need to have a lot of people there. I need to make sure I'm paying rent there, versus running just taking a hit for a few months and getting something automated solution, which will help me with the same capacity, if you will, right? Does it make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And I'll say, I'll maybe add to it, which I think is, it may just be saying exactly what you are, but you get to a point where it's like that also is part of why the AMRs make such sense, is because you can just pick them up and move them.
Yeah.
You can go to a new thing.
Correct.
Whereas, if you look at something like AutoStore, which once again, big fan. I love that there aren't aisles. I love that it's that you don't get more density than that.
Yep.
You just don't.
Yep.
And there's no walking.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a great thing. But the other piece of it is if your return is 3 years and your typical lease is 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So you're going to break even year 3, and then you're either committed to that building.
Yeah.
And you need to do it for another 4 or 5 years to make sense, or you need to be ready to eat the 30%, 40%, whatever it costs to move that thing. So, break it down, set it up, put it back together.
And that's the biggest, I would say, decision point that most of the 3PLs have to make. That, hey, my lease is 3 to 5 years, even though I will get a new customer who will fit the same profile, hopefully, right? That where an AutoStore solution or a Cube ASRS solution makes sense. But I wouldn't sure that if I have the lease or not, right? And unfortunately, that's a decision the 3PLs have to make. And that's why, as you mentioned, AMR's ecosystem does make sense, right? And the adoption, if DHR is investing so much in ecosystem, is because those are the decision points they already thought about, and it really makes sense to them. Whereas if you think about like the adoption of different ASRS system is mostly with the retailers, right? Retailers make sense to them. Hey, I want to go high. I want to get condensed because I know I will get my benefit out of it, and I'm gonna run this warehouse until anything out of blue happens where I have to close the warehouse. There will be people who will debate with me on this one. Like Amazon is a 3PL too. They will debate with me. Amazon has variety of SKUs that they will handle. They will take care. They do not know what the next seller will be on Amazon, will be using fulfilled by Amazon, and they do not know. But with Amazon is that even though they have only one system, robotic system for picking, which is Kiva right now, where they have a Kiva systems on a shelf comes to them, you pick it up. But Amazon has the power to dictate terms that a lot of operators don't have, right? Amazon can say that, hey, if it's less than, I think there's a dimension 10 by 12 by 16 or something like that. If it's less than that, that's conveyable. Beyond that is non-conveyable. You go to a different warehouse. That power to tell where does a SKU go, where will it SKU, how it will be fulfilled, Amazon has it. That's why they can design a warehouse which only play with a specific type of SKU, and they don't have to worry about the automation, because now I know as an automation, and this is what I always say, automation likes constant, right? Robotics likes constant. So now, because as an Amazon, I'm dictating the terms that whatever goes into this warehouse where my Kiva robots are, this is type of SKU I can handle. That's the only type of SKU. That's why I'm going to own the warehouse. I'm going to own my robotics. I'm going to dictate what SKUs come in. And that's why I'm going to do great with it, right? And as a 3PL, if you think about Amazon, is a type of 3PL who can dictate those terms. But if a small 3PL, an operator, you cannot dictate those terms at that point.
Well, Amazon definitely has they are absolutely a 3PL. I mean, they just rolled out their Amazon warehousing and distribution, which competes directly with 3PLs.
Oh, I didn't know that. Awesome.
Okay. And well, I mean,
not awesome. But yeah.
No, it's fine. There's I don't know if you ever went over this in when you're in college or anything, but there's a famous note. It's called Porter's Five Forces. And it's, it's an industry competitive thing where you look at the suppliers, your competitors, everything. And, so you want to figure out who is in the five, where do people fall in? And the answer for some people is like, they're your competitor, they're your customer, they're your vendor, they're everything.
Yeah.
And Amazon's kind of one of those that hits all five of the forces. But anyway, you bring up a good point. And the other thing, so I have an East Coast warehouse and a West Coast warehouse. Mm-hmm. Amazon has got, I think, 12 million square feet, or at one point it was only 12, 15, maybe now it's up to 20 million square feet within 12 miles, 15 miles of, maybe it was a 20-mile radius in the Inland Empire. Oh, wow. So they also have the luxury of being able to say, this is all going to be small electronics.
Correct.
This warehouse is going to be large. This is going to be furniture. This is going to be a bulk warehouse. Yep. And so if you don't have that and you're taking on, and once again, as a small, medium-sized business, you want to take everybody you can. Yep. There are some things out there like it takes a special, very earnest operator to take tire companies.
Oh, I tell you about it.
And or dog food or things like that. Which bag dog food.
Yeah.
So we even small, medium businesses a lot of us have our limits, but by and large, you want to take everything.
Correct. Yep.
And so it's hard to, in doing that, I think the really interesting point to take from this is if you're going to deploy a robotic system, you have to be thinking of it from the perspective, okay, are you going to adjust your customer set to really fit within the automation that you're deploying? Or is your automation only going to serve 70% of your customers?
Correct. And I think that's the challenge that has, I would not say reduced, but I would say has made the adoption of robots a little slow compared to what people thought in 2020. As someone who comes from the industry, and my thought was it's not going to never be an exponential growth because for robotics in warehouses, because warehouses are dynamic and robotics like constant. So someone has to give something to match, right? So compared to what market analysis or market researchers did in 2020, 2021, where they're like, hey, robotics is going to be exponential. It's going to, by 2025, everything will be great and no more walking during picking. I don't think so that's going to happen because, for the same reason that we just talked about, that as an operator, as a 3PL business, I need to be very cost conscious at the same time. I need to be very focused on what my client profile is, right? I can say that you will make a lot of money as a fulfillment player. Sorry, let me rephrase. You will have a lot of revenue coming as a fulfillment player.
That's a very... I was about to get you on that one because it's like a lot of revenue doesn't mean you're making a lot of money.
Correct, because it's a lot of people as well, right? So a lot of expenses, a lot of things. So they always like look at the large revenue that has a 3PL. I'm making, let's say, $30 million a year, but what's your expense? Is it 25, 27, 28, 29, right? Or is it 31, right? So that has, when the market researchers were looking at it, I felt like they didn't really feel that adoption is great. We need adoption, but it's not going to be exponential because robots, there are few robots that are good for dynamic environment. There are few robots, or there are majority of robots who always like constant. Right. So
now I remember before we took a brief break, I remember exactly what we were talking about, and it was the idea that a lot of these more sophisticated systems, it kind of goes back to like the tier 1 WMSs. These very, very sophisticated systems are in that constant like retailer scenario where there's a very defined set of SKUs, and you don't have customers introducing new SKUs often, or
and even if your SKUs, it's going to be same SKU profile, right? I know if I'm a cosmetic, I have a lipstick, I'll have another lipstick, but different color.
Right. And so, you look at the huge, like the really sophisticated systems, like the Mechalux systems and things like that. And it's like, you're gonna that's a $30 million, $40 million system that Nordstrom's is going to deploy in their store, or in their warehouse. But they have that SKU portfolio is very constant.
Correct. Yes.
And
So great point. So I'll tell you, when I was designing robotic solutions, the key data points we used to ask for our clients was like, give me your SKU profile, DIMS, right? I need your DIMS. I need your order profile. Those are the two main things that I need before even starting the conversation of can the robot fit or not? Can the robot do it or not, right? Because there are so many, and having said that, there is a little bit more flexibility with mobile robots versus a robotic arm, because we have been talking mostly about mobile robots, but there is a robotic arm aspect as well, right? Where you have a robotic arm, let's say palletizing or depalletizing. You have a robotic arm, let's say for Boston Dynamics, they have for Stretch robot, which goes truck unloading robot.
Stretch is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, but yes.
Yeah. So there are robotic arms which are also have a use case within the warehousing space, but I used to sell robotic arms. So for me, it was very much specific that, hey, your SKU dimensions, your order profile, I need to really look at it before we can start even talking about it. So, and that's where the challenge happens as well. Like as an operator, I'm pretty confident that 50 to 60% doesn't have all the SKU dimensions, because you do not know, your customers cannot provide you that, right? So, again, that's a challenge as well. Like for redesigning a robotic system for you, right? I do not really know what my SKU dimensions are. I know that they can fit you, and at that point you can do the reverse engineering, see which outbound boxes they go in and kind of figure out. But again, that's a small challenge that I think market research back in 2020 didn't realize, that SKU dimensions are very important to understand a robotic system, and most of the 3PLs will not have SKU dimensions easily available.
Correct. Because from my perspective, let's say I've got a warehouse that is 90% full, and I've got the SKU mix, and everybody's right, and everybody's really good. But then that one customer comes in that's got SKU dimensions that don't work for my robot, but it's a single SKU customer. They're doing 10,000 items a month. It's the perfect customer.
Yes. And we love that customers, right?
But then you've got a warehouse set up that won't accept it.
Correct. Yeah.
And so it's like...
and that's the challenge we always, as 3PL specifically, the operators will face it, right? Mm-hmm. Always the challenge. And that's why And again, I think there are many 3PLs in the market, and people forget that they are majority of the people who move products within United States or North America, I would say. And I just keep hitting 2020 point. Like market researcher didn't realize that 3PLs have these challenges, right? They only looked at some retailers and they're like, oh, retailers are adopting robots. So everyone will follow them and adopt the robots. Amazon did robots. Everyone will put robots. No, but Amazon had different factors, different environment they were working on versus a typical 3PL that it's working on.
Yeah. And that's one of the things. And it's not just for robotics either. I mean, if you think of, here's a good example, solar power in Southern California. The stat, and I didn't do this research myself. I didn't. This is just the stat I heard from people who are much smarter than I am. Is that there's only about 30% of the buildings in the industrial or in the Inland Empire that can even support, that have the roof structures that can even support solar.
Right.
And then there are a little bit harder to verify other like whisperings out there that there have been multiple thermal events, is what they're being referred to, from that in buildings that have solar on the roof.
Oh, that sucks.
Fires that started on the roof.
That sucks. Yeah.
And we don't know, like, I don't want to cast a shadow on that, but it's like when you get to the practicality, like when the rubber meets the road, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I'll give you another example. So Amazon's got all these robots. Amazon owns Whole Foods.
Yep.
If I go into a Whole Foods, I am absolutely creeped out when I see the pay with Palm thing. So it's
I
like,
didn't know that actually.
They have here in DFW at least.
Wow.
They've got these. You can pay with biometrics.
Oh wow,
and I'm like,
that's interesting.
I don't want them to have my palm.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Like, why would? Anyways, that's a different. Why would they have a palm?
But
where did they get it from?
Yeah, but I mean, they want you to put it on there, and they link your payment information, all that sort of stuff with your Amazon account. It's like I don't want them to have that data.
Interesting.
And I'm sure I'm old school in that thinking, but
no, I mean having fingerprints is a difference. Yeah, pictures I understand everywhere we have pictures now, but fingerprints is like okay, cool, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah,
oh.
But it's we're going off topic, but and that's my fault. Another thing I think I want to mention earlier, excuse me, is. I'm not sure that Nordstrom's warehouse has the Mechalux system. I just know they have a highly sophisticated.
Yeah, they have Robotics.
Okay,
they have Robotics out of in California.
I was merely taking the example of a retailer and a very sophisticated automation.
They have Robotics. I heard some news on it. I haven't catch up on what are the news on that, but they have Robotics there in California at least.
Okay, glad we clarified because I didn't want somebody thinking I was making assumptions. So a lot of considerations go into this decision.
100%. Like, and I recently had a post on my LinkedIn as well. Actually, no, one of my good friend Cody, he's at Numina Group, and he reached out to me, and he had a very good post on LinkedIn about what's the typical path forward for operators to buy robotics. Mm-hmm. Is it CapEx, RAS, or it depends, right? And to that, I actually think it depends. For example, for sure it depends. But for me, it's pretty much the second step. The first step is finding the right robot solution fit, right? Irrespective of what financial model I go with, is it RAS, is it CapEx, is it some kind of lease, is it some kind of just working with your credit provider and just getting a credit line or something. There are financial leaders will find good ways to make it happen if you have a good robot solution fit for it. So that's the point I hammered on that LinkedIn post as well. Like, we need to first figure out the right robot solution fit before even thinking about what the ROI is, what the cost is. Because once you find the right robot solution fit, you think that you will be able to find somehow, somewhere, some opportunity to find an ROI.
It makes sense. It's also worth noting, and you mentioned Boston Dynamics Stretch, which of all the cool YouTube videos I've ever seen, Stretch was the very first application to the real world where
Correct,
that wasn't military related.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Where I thought that makes a lot of sense. And you make the comment that going back to that idea of like removing the suck from a job.
Yep.
One of the worst jobs. Well, I mean, in my opinion, unless you're just trying to lose a lot of weight and get really jacked.
Yeah. Yep.
One of the worst jobs in a warehouse is unloading containers.
100%.
And so Stretch is like something that you can deploy. And I almost look at Stretch as more of a, and I don't know exactly how their implementation into your system goes, but I feel the way it seemed like it was presented, and this was at Modex in 2022, I believe it would have been.
Okay, yeah. They had a DHL storage, case storage, like DHL.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. It looked like that thing could just drive in there and just, as long as your cardboard was flat, as long as the cardboard was strong enough to support the box, that suction thing could go on there and take up to 40 pounds and put it on the conveyor, and then it would convey out.
Correct. Yeah.
That is something that I feel like even if we couldn't unload 100% of our containers, that would move the needle. Like 2 or 3 of those things would move the needle enough that you're now replacing.
So exactly the point that I was talking today with one of my colleague. I was like, I think one of the most, I feel like is the worst job is not worst job. Let me rephrase. One of the most
taxing.
Sweating job is unloading a truck, especially if you are in like the Sunbelt area, right? So hot here, right? So for them, yes, it does. The truck unloading definitely can use some kind of robotic solution. Stretch is there for sure. There are other players now as well who are doing this. So there is called Pickle Robot. There is Muhin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name. They're a Japanese company. They just launched their truck unloading robot in this ProMat this year. So there are many players who are trying to solve that problem. The only but only consideration I would say is how much time does it take to unload, right? Because, for example, my understanding is, and again, I do not have the right numbers, is there is some time constraint on how fast or how soon you need to unload a truck. Let's say if it's FedEx or USPS or stuff like that, and how much time does it take, right? So that's something needs to be in the consideration. But to your point, I completely agree that even if it solves for 50%, that's still a win.
Yes. And it may not be a great application for UPS or FedEx because it's like they are turning those trucks so much faster.
Correct.
But when you've got an unloading, even if you're doing a live unload, and let's say I think the numbers that were given to me on the floor, which, I don't know how many of their pilots had gone. I actually know some people who are piloting them now that I could probably ask, and they would tell me, but I wouldn't be able to share. The numbers that were given to me was that the Stretch could unload, I think it was up to 800 cartons per hour, I think is what they what they said.
Okay.
And so that's a healthy rate.
Oh, that's actually a solid rate.
That's a very healthy rate. And if that's accurate, if that's the way it's been, then that's But you see, even then, I did the mental math. Like while they said, okay, the estimated payback time was 2 years at the time, I think is what they said. And I said, okay, so you're looking at and you're comparing this against the labor resource. I said, okay. And so I took, our hourly rate, and I said, what is this about the hourly rate you're using? And then, you fully burden it. So, it goes, let's say that rate's somewhere around $20, $25 an hour.
Yep.
Well, they were calculating it on 2 shifts as well. So it's basically
25 times 2, $40, $50 an hour, basically.
Well,
yeah.
Well, the way I was looking at it was they were calculating ROI based on running 2 shifts. And so that thing had its battery capacity. And I mean, look, this has been a couple of, a year and a half ago or whatever. Yeah. So I am rusty on this. I'm not, nobody hold my feet to the fire. But I interpret it to be 16 hours of operational time that did not, and the rest, and then the other 8 hours was plugged into the wall to recharge.
To recharge it, yeah.
Which is fine. But you're not going to get a constant 16 hours. You're not going to get a constant.
You will
60,
not. Correct,
you've got to move it to the next container. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. A lot of operations aren't unloading containers 16 hours.
Yep.
I mean, the people who can afford this, I mean, can afford them, a lot of them, they would. I mean, basically, I came around to a number where it was like $200,000 to $250,000 per robot. And that was just based on the conversation we had there.
Correct.
I don't know what the real world cost has come out to.
Yep.
But it's like it's a very big, very, very big investment. Now you're talking about, I mean, if you're a single shift operation, your payback is 4 years. And that's even if you can get somebody to like finance it for you.
Correct. Yeah.
On the terms that it's going to make sense.
And that's that. I think that's the challenge. I think I feel like if you have to talk about the mobile robot, which is more, if the cost makes sense, the most versatility is with truck unloading robots, right? If I'm a 3PL, my niche is e-commerce, right? I know my next client, if I lose this client, my next client is going to be e-commerce because I have a success with e-commerce, right? Basically D2C brands. So I know my next customer will be that. So at that point, I know I'll get floor loaded cartons, right? Cases, if you will. And that robot can be used again 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line. So that's the most versatile use case, I feel like, that a truck unloading robot has. But one thing that I definitely remind everyone, specifically like medium to small size vendors or operators, is that think about maintenance as well. Because many times, this is not something like a forklift where you can go to a distributor and try to find someone who can solve it. Either you need to have a trained staff on your payroll, or you need to always go back to, you need to have a service agreement with your service provider, like a warehouse robotic service provider. So maintenance can definitely be Achilles' heels if you don't plan well.
Right. A lot of considerations to doing this.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot. Like that's what I always felt like, that when I started on this journey about enabling robots in the warehouse, like when the rubber meets the road, there are so many gaps that operators don't realize, and because they go to Modex, go to ProMat, and of course there is all these robots. So we just feel that everyone is talking about robots, but once you come back and start talking, you realize that there are 10,000 considerations before I can invest money, which anyways is scarce as an operator before investing in it.
Mm-hmm. I remember that when I was walking Modex, I mean, AutoStore was one of the things I was introduced to there that I blew me away. Stretch was the other thing. Nice. And the third thing were these, and I have the name somewhere, and I'm sure I'll mention it on another podcast, but I mean, it's literally, they would take your pallet positions. Like they would take you would have your ground floor. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3 bays, however your racking configuration is. And they put what looked like just hanging racks on rollers. And so it were these bins that were in a fabric, and it almost looked like the closet. It looked like closet organizers. But they would have, let's say you could fit 5 or 6 wide. Well, they would have 4 hanging there. So then what you do is you'd have 3 deep, and then you could move them side to side. Oh, and so you could actually dig into, and you could get it. And so it's like you had now this organizable, I think it was UVEX is one of them, storage, Storganizer.
Oh, Storganizer, okay.
Yeah, and it was a very low-tech thing.
Yeah.
But they were incredible. I mean, I looked at it, and I mean, you look at the versatility, like from a picking operation that's where you primarily have pallet racking,
yep.
And it's those. There's so many very basic ideas. Out there 100%. that help improve it, and it doesn't have to. I mean, let's just say the entire industry overnight started utilizing their WMS to its maximum potential. You wouldn't have a capacity issue for a while because everything, I mean, the gain in efficiency would be so great across the entire supply chain.
100%, yeah. And so that being said, there is space. I would say there is place for robotics, right?
Of course, absolutely.
There is space for robotics. And robotics not just within picking, right? So I feel like there are companies who are making automated packaging machines, right? They create packaging right up to either they create a packaging right basically of size of your SKU, or they basically
Great example.
Yeah, and they basically create you basically design your size of the cartons that you want, and they just spit that out, right? So there are automated packaging machines that are really doing great. There is also a way to save money on shipping less air, right? That helps you with shipping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's environmentally friendly. You're going to get more. You're minimizing your footprint, what you're paying for on shipping. You're absolutely correct. And I didn't say what I just said. I didn't mean to say that, we should all just focus on the non-robotic things. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I only said that because it is very easy as a smaller operator to
100%.
look at to go to a show like Modex or ProMat and just almost feel down on yourself. Because it's like, how could I ever afford that? How could I am so far behind the thing. It's the equivalent of like social media.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's where I use this stat. So I follow GXO on their invested in GXO as well. So I follow their chief financial officer he comes on Bloomberg many times. Is like, he says one thing that only 18 to 20% of warehouses are automated right now. Have some kind of automation, not even automated, have some kind of automation. So that's the number I threw out there because I wanted to make sure that all the operators who are listening, ProMat is drinking from a fire hose. So don't worry about anything that you see there. Doesn't mean that you need to implement. Yes, that's a good information to have but once you come back, really need to start thinking about those things and see what is the best step forward for you. It doesn't mean that you should implement robot tomorrow kind of thing.
Right. It's a treasure map of sorts.
Correct. Yes. Correct. So many things there, right? Like even if one example that I think about that are really solid and easy improvement is your I forgot this, like a auto bagger solution, right? If you have higher single unit orders, for example, let's say you are shipping orders for shoes, most of the shoes ideally would, if they're expensive shoes, mostly it will be one pair of shoes that you'll be shipping, right? As Jordans or something like that. And at that time, you have so much single unit orders that you can pretty much do a batch picking, go to that location, pick up 100 orders, bring that cart or bring that tote, or bring a cart to or pack auto baggers and just start doing auto bagger with your food. So your packing happens like within pretty quick. Right?
Yeah.
That's a simple solution that we can think about as an operator.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going down, we can start wrapping up because you and I have dinner and and I'm starting to get hungry and I become a very unpleasant person if I get hungry now. There have been some very, very sophisticated automation systems. I think one, and I was going to ask if you had any experience with it. I think it's called the Joeys. It's the garment bag thing. So, I mean, it looks like they basically turn the entire warehouse, it looks like, into this huge dry cleaning sort of thing where it's like these carousels that it's excellent for garments. And I think that's really why they do it.
Refurbishing, returns garments or brand new garments?
Just garment fulfillment.
Okay.
So they'll put like, and maybe it's one unit per bag or a few units per bag, but they'll put it in there and it goes up and it takes it real high. And then it's just all these bags are vertically sorted and horizontally and vertically sorted. But there's not a physical rack because everything's hanging. And so when the order pops up, the bag just like comes down the conveyor, and then they just start queuing up. It's almost like going to Six Flags, and you see just everybody's like on the train.
No, I haven't seen that. We were exploring something not on the same level, but we were exploring for returns. Yeah. So for when you have like a athlete, like expensive brand who has returns.
Yeah.
When it comes to returns, we were looking at a solution where we wanted to see if we can pretty much induct a return item, but on the other end, you get a fresh item, meaning that it is dry cleaned, it's folded up and stuff like that. But yeah, I haven't seen that system that you're mentioning.
Yeah, it's there's so much out there, and I think it's great because it's like, even we talk about automation, we talk about robots. I mean, your simpler robots. I mean, even a pallet wrapping machine is a form of automation.
Correct. Yep.
And so it's like there are tons and tons of ways you can start to automate.
100%. And that you remind me of two examples, like when you say about different kind of robots. One robot that I recently came across was in Japan, and they were a garment industry example that they gave. So they had a typical IKEA type, if you think of like a shelf, not a shelf, but IKEA type hanger, where you had one rod with a hanger and you put in your garments so they hang, but they are on a square basically, and that square is basically moving. It's like a Tetris. You basically, if you have an order which is in the last square, in a way of Tetris, it comes out of it. But the technology was based on maglev train. So maglev. So this was pretty solid, right? It's a magnetic base. So it was maglev. We know about maglev trains. Now it was based on maglev robots. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So that was one use case.
It's turning your warehouse into weaponized.
Yeah, and I forgot about the second one. I hadn't thought about the second one as well, but. There are so many different technologies out there. People are just experimenting on, which is good. Which is good for
it is excellent.
Yeah, which is great. But at the same time, if I was an engineer, if I was designing system, I would want the best of the best. I want my metal to be the best of the best. I want to coat it really nice. But as an operator, I have to be cost conscious. I have to make sure that I'm putting the right step forward before going all out, all guns blazing on a robotic solution.
Yeah, and I think there's. I have a perspective that you kind of have to earn it. Like you have to earn the right to the nicer systems, to the nicer things, and that sort of thing. Where it's like you could end up just throwing good money after bad ideas if it's a flavor of the month type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I really think that as we start to think about wrapping this up, first and foremost, step one, make sure you're maximizing your WMS. And then step two at that point, have a very, very intentional plan that's going to be multi-steps because you really need to understand where you want to go and what your situation is, what you want your SKUs to be like, your sizing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's solid. I'll also say there is a step zero before step WMS is your typical simple slotting, making sure using like simple industrial engineering concepts about making sure you have a right slot, your SKUs are not scattered for a client, making sure your pick paths are really fine. You are not just walking back and forth. Your pick sequence is right. All those are basic industrial engineering concepts, simple, not typical hard concepts, but you also have your ABCs planned out. So for example, because let's say you have a client, you look at your sales volume and you can look at your SKUs and you put all your high moving SKUs closer to the pack stations. This is basically Excel-based calculations that you can do. Mm-hmm. Then the Bs and the Cs, you don't need WMS in that. Honestly, you don't need a WMS in it. You pretty much just need your order volume or order that you shipped out and your SKUs that you have. Marry them up in an Excel. You will know which SKUs were shipped the most, and you just put those shipped closer to the pack stations, right? So that way you are able to, you're not walking too much to fulfill your 90% of 80% of your sales volume, right? So that's the easiest step that you can start thinking about even before going into WMS. Then going to the WMS. Now, if your WMS is driving your picking, you think about pick sequences, how best you can arrange your pick path so that you're reducing unnecessary walk. For example, we had a pick path where we were trying to go from, it was like a 21 bay long aisle with a breezeway in between. We were walking the whole aisle and coming back, walking the whole aisle, 21 bays with a breezeway. So we decided, we of course, we had to do slotting before that, where we thought the A movers would be closed, B movers follow that, and C movers. Now we designed a pick path which cuts on the breezeway and comes back, right? So that way you are reducing your walking, and you start from here, do the breezeway. I'm sorry, listeners cannot see it, but you come back, take a U-turn and come back again. At the end, you start where you end.
Yes.
So those are the simple steps you can do. And then WMS, of course.
And and what you're talking about is you're talking about basically industrial design, industrial flow, like
material flow,
flow and that kind of stuff. Which once again, there are lots of people out there who can, go engage with an industrial engineer, a design workspace design engineer.
Correct. Yeah.
What would be the?
So you can. Honestly, you can go to some. There are system integrators who have industrial engineers on their payroll. They can help you design the material flow. That how do you want to do it? But at the same time, I feel there are a few things that we can easily do it. Like as I said, just look at your sales volume. Just start with your giving prime real estate to your prime SKUs.
Right.
That's how you can start with. That will reduce your picking anyways.
And so I do want to clarify, you're not suggesting any warehouse should really run without a WMS. You're just suggesting that before you go to the optimization in the WMS, that they can just use some common sense.
Correct.
And say,
yes.
All right, customer A does 500 orders a day. Customer B does 100 orders a day, or even 20 orders a day. And then this customer does one to 2 orders a day. So put your 20 order, your high volume customer closest.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So let me agree too. WMS has its benefits for sure.
Well, I hear a lot of customer horror stories where they worked with an operator who was still using like Google Sheets or Excel or something like that. And I don't
think so. That's all right. Because you have to understand, as an operator, as a customer, you need to have a system of records. You need to trace everything. You need to understand where things happen, how things happen.
Yes.
So that WMS is, right, at the end, WMS system of records plus additional capabilities, right?
Yep. And that's not to say, that's assuming, and this is all in the vein of direct-to-consumer fulfillment, there are modules out there, like I know, for instance, returns operations that are using a very specific like piece of software for that return stuff that's not related to the WMS, because it's all about grading and then sorting.
Yep.
And then you just track where it's,
correct.
The thing comes in, it either gets put back on a truck to go out or it doesn't. And that's its own specific thing. So it's like, I do know operators out there that don't have a WMS that are doing exactly what they're,
Correct. Yeah. And system. So at the end, any business that you run, be it a returns business, cell phone grading and making it better, or a forward fulfillment, which is a typical 3PL business, you need to have a system. System is no doubt you need to have it. But again, the point I was trying to convey is like, even before the system, there are small changes that you can do,
of course,
which can really help you improve your picking rates or improve your flow, warehouse flow.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And then step 0 is just common sense.
Yes, that's true. But hey, common sense is not common.
That's fair. That is fair. Step 2, really step 1, maximize what you already have.
Correct.
And then step 2, excuse me, I keep on wanting to jump ahead. Step 2 in this case. So after you've maximized, then the next thing to do is to start identifying minimally invasive.
If it's a brownfield, yes, minimally invasive, and for robot as a constant, like so monotonous jobs.
Yes.
Minimally invasive, monotonous jobs. And if you're a forward fulfillment warehouse, typical, you are looking at walking a lot. Then if you are a pallet base, you are looking at cross-docking a lot, right? So you pretty much A to B, that's what you're doing, right? That pallet shows up here, take that pallet, move it to the outbound. Inbound, outbound, that's cross-dock usually. So that can be a monotonous job as well. Other solution that we all, as we're talking about robotic arms, I was like, there is a robotic arm of just picking items and dropping, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, unit sorter induction. So when you have a unit sorter, if you have a simple type of SKU, let's say a cosmetic item, you know that my SKU dimensions will go from 3 inches to, let's say, 7 inches max. I can just keep using a robotic arm to do that job.
Right.
So so look for monotonous, repetitive jobs, functions, and that will help you identify.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we can start to wrap up, or we can just wrap it up. How do people find you? If people have questions, if they want to engage?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can look for me, Parth Pethani, on LinkedIn, as well as I have a website called whacrobotics.com. There you can find my contact info. I have a WHSE warehouse, robotics.com.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the short form for warehouse. and whscrobotics.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, and I have learned a lot more than I thought. I really appreciate the perspective, and I hope everybody else. I don't hope. I think everyone else is going to find it very, very enjoyable as well.
No, thank you for having me, Mark. It was a pleasure to chat on this. It's just amazing to think about what are the potential opportunities in front of us.
Absolutely, and we're going to be. I mean, this is a multi-decade thing, and I said it at the very beginning, but it's like, it's not that this is replacing people. This is what we need to
the next. Next step. Yep.
We can't do it without augmentation.
Correct. Yep.
And with that, thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.